Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian.
And when I'm not playing a mother in the most dire of circumstances, I live in a hollowed-out oak tree with a pack of wood nymphs.
Beautiful. I feel, who was it on SNL who did the Björk? I feel like there was someone who was always doing a Björk impression on Saturday Night Live. I don't remember now.
Our neighbors are a pack of fairies, and when they flutter their wings together, the magic dust makes us all giggle.
I think it was Kate McKinnon. Does that sound
it might have been.
possible?
I'm not sure who it was. I feel like it was earlier than that, but either way, I feel like...
Oh, Kristen Wiig?
Yeah, it could have been. I feel like there's a little of your Bruno S. impression leaking into Björk there, but that's okay.
I'll take it. I think it was Kristen Wiig.
All right. Well, you're no Kristen Wiig, but we appreciate the effort nonetheless. Why is Jason talking?
I thought it was solid.
Yeah, it was not bad. No, it was not bad. What reason is there for Jason to do a Björk impression?
Bring some levity to this subject.
Yeah, we need that.
That's why.
We need that here for this episode. In this season of Awesome Movie Year, we're talking about the movies of the year 2000, and we are here at the Cannes Film Festival to talk about the Palme d'Or winner, which is Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark, starring Björk in basically her only major acting work ever. And this movie broke her, and it may have broken us.
What I asked Josh this thing because we did the 99 season, and it was the Rosetta one, right? By the what are their names?
The Dardenne brothers, yeah.
And then this was right after, we did 96 Secrets and Lies. Why does Cannes hate happiness?
Well, we did. I don't know if I guess it doesn't qualify as happy, but it was less depressing. We had The Wages of Fear in 1953.
Oh, super happy movie. Yeah, that's a great one. Let's look at some others we've covered here. Elephant, the Gus Van Sant movie. 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. The Christian Mungiu movie. Josh, all happy ones, right?
Right.
Amor, the Michael Haneke movie. Come on, man.
Going all the way back to our first ever season, 1994, Pulp Fiction. That's a lot of fun, that movie.
Yes, okay. I'll give you that one. And then in 84, we had Paris, Texas. I mean, come on, bro.
Yeah, they're serious films. Cannes is not giving the Palme d'Or to Michael Bay. I'm sorry. Unless he remakes a Dardenne Brothers movie, maybe.
I'm just saying, Josh, you live on the beach in a rich area in one of the most beautiful places in France, if not the world. And you got to depress us every year by picking why can't Step Brothers win? Huh?
I don't think Step Brothers was in competition. They usually do have Hollywood premieres. I think Shrek premiered at Cannes and things like that. They just don't play in competition, so they're not eligible for any of the awards.
I mean, talk about depressing. Last year's premiere was the Indiana Jones movie.
Oh,
boom!
I kind of like that movie, but that's a subject for a different podcast. So this movie did win the Palme d'Or. It also won the Best Actress Award at Cannes for Björk's performance, as Jason so brilliantly captured there in his impression. It was also, awarded in many other capacities. It was nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Original Song for I've Seen It All. It did lose, however, to Things Have Changed by Bob Dylan from Wonder Boys. It won the Best Foreign Film Award at the Independent Spirit Awards and was nominated for 2 Golden Globes for that song and for Björk's performance. So this is a divisive film, but it was certainly fairly well represented at awards this year.
Josh, later in this episode, we have an interview. I'm interviewing Justin Bishop, the adaptive skateboarder. And after I spoke with him, I think the insight that he gave me has me drop this down a level.
Okay.
Because, Justin's a adaptive skateboarder. He's fully blind now. He had a degenerative eye condition. So we wanted to get his opinion on if this was honest and if it worked. And when I first watched it, I thought it was pretty good. But when I read all the criticisms, I'm like, yeah, these are all valid. And then when Justin, who's been through something like this, gave me his opinion, I was like, I got to take that and there's no animal cruelty, thankfully, unlike other Lars von Trier movies. But I do have to drop it just a bit because of that.
All right. Well, yeah, cruelty of any kind is certainly a Lars von Trier trademark, and I'm curious. I'm curious about what he had to say, but in no way did I ever think that this was a realistic portrayal of anything. And I think that's kind of how Lars von Trier operates.
No, I understand that, but I think where we get to where he is in Act 3, it becomes extremely manipulative, and if you go with that, then you go with it, and if not, it takes you completely out of the whole movie.
Yeah, well, that's again basically what he does. So this was also surprisingly successful at the box office, grossing $45.6 million on its budget of just $12.5 million. I think there's a sort of morbid curiosity factor maybe for this film, as well as a lot of Lars von Trier films. And it is divisive, certainly, among critics, even critics who are very positive about it. And I feel like generally people who are positive about it, there's a lot of like Letterboxd reviews of this movie that are essentially like, this was the most unbearable thing I have ever watched, 5 stars. Because I think even people who approve or endorse this film, it's like, this is a punishing experience.
I mean, so I honestly I obviously know who Lars von Trier is, Dogma 95, but I never seeked him out as a filmmaker. So along with this, I watched Melancholia and The Five Obstructions. And unlike, say, the Sidney Lumet episode where I could watch 17 movies of his in a row, I'm like, I'm good on von Trier for a minute, even though I think Melancholia is a great movie. I just don't want to watch more of this right now. I need a break, bro.
Right. Yeah. And that is understandable. And I've seen quite a few von Trier movies, but I had thought maybe I would watch 1 or 2 that I'd never seen before to add to this. And after I watched this movie again, and I didn't get to finish it until yesterday, I was like, no, I don't need to do a double feature of von Trier films in a single day. I don't think I can handle that. So I decided to leave that to the side. But critics also, I think, had a endurance test maybe watching this film. So Roger Ebert was very positive, but he said some reasonable people will admire Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark, and others will despise it. An excellent case can be made for both positions. It's a brave throwback to the fundamentals of the cinema, to heroines and villains, noble sacrifices, and dastardly betrayals. Dancer in the Dark is not like any other movie at the multiplex this week or this year. It is not a well-made film. It is not in good taste, is not plausible, or for many people, entertaining. But it smashes down the walls of habit that surround so many movies. It returns to the wellsprings. It is a bold, reckless gesture.
I think bold and reckless, you could go that way, or you could say it's a total mishmash that doesn't work. You don't get your first song until 40 minutes in. Obviously, it's not Dogma 95, but unlike Melancholia, he didn't really care about the look of this per se. He's very...
Well, I think he did care. He just deliberately made it look like garbage.
Yes, that's a better... And that's one of the negatives of this movie, I'd say.
I agree. I mean, I think part of it, too, is that Melancholia is from, what is it? Is it 2011, I think? So
yes,
just the development in the technology of digital video in that period is a huge leap. I mean, I think von Trier probably liked the fact that this looks so shitty, but there are tons of any movie you watch that was shot on digital video from this time period looks awful. And I mean, there were plenty of people who were trying to make it look better.
Right. But if we're watching a Joe Swanberg movie for $20,000 at the time, that makes sense. But if you're getting Robbie Mueller as your director of photography, why are you using him if this is what you're going to do with him?
Right. I mean, I think the point is that if you chose to shoot on digital video in 2000, this is the best it's going to look.
I'm just saying for this subject matter, I don't think this was the right way to go about it.
Right.
And I have that right to tell Lars von Trier how to fix his movies. No, I'm just saying this subject matter and the fact that it's a musical, And the fact that you have Robbie Mueller, I think, and it was a nice setting. Like, I feel like the look let this movie down.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think is that like the contrast between the main like quote realistic scenes or naturalistic scenes and the musical scenes could have been greater if instead of just changing up like camera positioning, he shoots it handheld most of the time, and then the musicals have fixed position cameras, and he kind of makes the colors a bit more vibrant,
lighter.
But the look is overall fairly similar. Like if he had shot those sequences on film, then the contrast would have been even stronger. And I think the idea of the contrast between her life and her interior life would have been stronger.
Dude, I think that's a great idea. And especially because it's a musical and we talk about the heightening of musicals and everything, right? And like, so if you're in this drab, kind of blue collar, struggling to get by, and then every time we go into the musicals, you go into, it's so quiet, or something, that looks amazing. That would have really been an effective way to do this thing. And especially with the ending, with the combination of the reality and the music, I think that would have been really interesting. Josh, you should have done this.
Yeah. So. I don't know if I could have come up with something so horrifying. Edward Guthman in the San Francisco Chronicle was very positive. He said, Dancer in the Dark is a thrilling, audacious work. The boldest experiment yet from Lars von Trier, one of the Danish founders of the Dogma 95 school of filmmaking. Dancer is the kind of ornery, brilliant film that inspires both adulation and scorn. Dancer in the Dark is so strange, so unlike what we're conditioned to expect from movies, that it's bound to alienate a lot of people. Critics are divided on the film, and when it won the top prize at Cannes last May, people booed. But I think Dancer does what art is meant to do. It provokes us, spurs debate, reconsiders a medium, and makes us rethink our world. It's great to see a movie so courageous and affecting, so committed to its own differentness.
I'm really glad you picked that review, Josh, because Dave and I were hoping you were going to pick it. We were both waiting for Guthman.
Oh, boy. Thank you for that.
I mean, again, you're getting this Lars. There's probably no one happier than Lars von Trier about how polarizing this movie is.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's other movies of his that are even more polarizing. And I think his goal is to get to that point. Absolutely. That is part of the purpose of this film.
So I hear them. I understand where they're coming from. And like I said, I'm guessing you're going to give us a negative review next. And yes. I totally understand that as well.
All right. Yeah. So Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian really hated this film. He said, for its sheer effrontery, for its browbeating melodrama and pseudo-tragedy, Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark has to be the most sensationally silly film of the year, as well as the most shallow and crudely manipulative. Everything about it is silly, from the faux naivete and implausibility of its plot to the secret little idiot savant smile on the face of its victim heroine played by Björk, a squeaking, chirruping diva turn sufficient to curdle every carton of milk within a 10-kilometer radius. Screen acting doesn't get much more dire than this, or at least I really hope not. And there are few films which could aspire or want to aspire to the extravaganza of unreflecting emoting and pain that Lars von Trier cheerfully expects us to endure.
I also picked a Bradshaw quote for my research. One of the worst films, one of the worst artworks, and perhaps one of the worst things in the history of the world.
Yeah, I think that was actually later in like a decade retrospective. So he had many years to reflect on how much he hated this film.
Nice. And if I was Lars von Trier, I'd put that right on the poster,
And he absolutely would. He absolutely would. One thing that I will refute here, whether
Björk,
you think
right?
this, she's great. She's great here.
I agree. I thought she was so good that I looked up the nominees for Best Actress in this year. And it's a murderer's row. Like, I'm like, I don't know where you could fit her in, but I thought she was worthy of contention there. But you have Julia Roberts won for Erin Brockovich. Then you have Joan Allen for The Contender. You have Juliette Binoche for Chocolat. You have Ellen Burstyn for Requiem for a Dream and Laura Linney for You Can Count on Me. Like, who do you take out of that bunch?
Yeah, I haven't seen Chocolat. or one other there that I haven't seen so much that I just already forgot what it was that you said. But I get the sense that Chocolat is one of these kind of trifles that maybe could have been. Not that Juliette Binoche is not a great actress, but maybe that would have been a slot open.
Well, you just said you didn't see it.
I know, but that's my sense of it. So I would love it if I watched it. But either way, I think we can agree that Bjork's performance here is great, even if you think this movie is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, I think so. I had read something where Von Trier was like, it's just a naturalism that she's doing. There's not like a per se technique or something like that. So, but I think that not only underestimates her, but also underestimates him, because one of the things that most impressed me with Melancholia was I thought that was probably the best I've ever seen Kirsten Dunst in anything. And I thought Kiefer Sutherland, that was probably his best performance. So whatever you feel about this guy, he is good at getting very good performances from actors.
Right, and very intense performances. And just before this, Emily Watson in Breaking the Waves was a huge breakthrough for her, playing a very, very similar character to this character. I mean, this is a kind of character, this sort of faux naive, innocent woman who just gets shit on for 2.5 hours is a very common Lars von Trier character. Nicole Kidman in Dogville plays another very similar version of this, and she's fantastic in that. So, yeah, I mean, I think to say it's not like Björk is playing herself here. She's not playing an Icelandic pop star. She's clearly creating a character who is very different from her. And I think, she deserves credit for that.
You know who credits her? Mia Goth. She loves the Björk in this movie.
I feel like if they make a Björk biopic, then
a biopic?
A biopic, yeah. Then Mia Goth should star in it. That's perfect casting right there.
I think so. Although I felt my audition at the beginning of this was pretty good.
You're a contender, certainly.
Yeah.
So you had not seen this or any Lars von Trier movie before this?
No, I mean, I kind of steered away knowing the reputation of like just how like heavy, depressing, efforted, and the feeling you get out of it. But I didn't dislike it, and I really like Melancholia. I would totally watch more of his stuff. It just kind of, it's not for like holiday dinners.
No, it's not. I had seen, I think maybe 7 Von Trier movies I've seen. I mean, in part because for a long period of time, when he had a new film, I would just end up seeing it to review it. And I'm back and forth. I mean, I think I'm always like impressed with how committed he is to making the audience feel like crap. I don't always think the movies are as successful. I'd seen this one, I think before Dogville came out and I was going to review it, I watched this and Breaking the Waves to like get a sense of Von Trier because I hadn't seen his films before. But Nymphomaniac in particular, I really like. That was definitely on my top 10, whatever year that came out. And that has actually like quite a good sense of humor and is dark and, intense, but also has a playfulness that I think is lacking in a lot of his other films.
Yeah, and the 5 Obstructions, I thought, which is this crazy documentary that no one who is not an obsessive film fan would ever want to watch. I thought it was like so insular because it's basically the idea is he takes like his idol who made a short film in 1968 and he gives him like new parameters to make it 5 different ways. But a lot of it is the interaction between, I think it's Jürgen Leth and him, and they're funny together. And Von Trier is funny even while creating these obstructions for him, right? So he just doesn't like to put it on screen all the time, I guess.
Right. He definitely doesn't. So, Dave, had you seen this before?
I hadn't seen this one. I had seen Melancholia, which I loved. I saw Antichrist, but I don't really remember how I felt about that one. But I've never really been a Björk fan, so that's why I never really seek this one out.
That's sort of surprising because I feel like Björk seems like she'd be totally in your musical wheelhouse.
Yeah, I do like her production and like the music of, what she does. I just have never gotten into her songwriting or her vocals.
Not even the Sugar Cubes?
I don't know which one that is, but
That's her band before they were.
Oh,
Go ahead,
really?
Josh.
No. Yeah. Do you find her squeaking and chirruping like Peter Bradshaw says?
Yeah, I was completely agreeing with that review. So, yeah.
The nice thing about that is her name almost sounds like that sound you could make if you were squeaking and chirping. Björk, Björk, Björk.
All right. Anything else you want to say about the background of this film, Jason?
Swan dress, bro.
Well, that's more for the legacy, I think. Yeah. But we'll get to it. I got a lot of material on the swan dress, so we'll come back and talk some of our general thoughts on Dancer in the Dark. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of the year 2000, we are talking about Cannes Palme d'Or winner Dancer in the Dark, and in a little bit we'll hear Justin's conversation
with Jason. You got it right. Justin Bishop and me, Jason Harris, your co-host and friend for over, almost 30 years now. You got it, Josh.
This movie has me really flustered. I'm at the gallows here, getting ready for my life to end here on this podcast.
Well, when we did this interview with Justin, he was like, "Hey, did this take place in the 50s?" And Dave and it didn't even occur to me that this took place in the 60s. Like, did you get that right off the bat, Josh?
Well, I got it because in the beginning of the movie, there is an on-screen title that says Washington State, 1964.
That's Dave. Let's just cut all that from both parts of the interview.
No, they're staying. They're staying.
I guess I guess that I was just beat down so much.
It's literally like the first minute of the movie. You haven't been beaten down yet.
From the rest of the movie afterwards, and I just forgot the time and place.
Jason was finishing making his coffee when that part of the movie.
Did you notice the cars that everyone was driving?
Yeah, can we just move on? I blew the time period on this one. I get it. So.
No, I will say to your credit that to me, one of the either flaws or I feel like any flaw that you point out, you could argue that like, oh, Von Trier meant it to be that way. But one of the issues is that even knowing, like, it's very clear to me that he means it to be this time period, but it doesn't feel like this time period. Like, other than the cars, definitely. Like, you can tell these are all older cars that everyone is driving, but there's no sense of evoking the time period. And I wondered, as I was watching this film, like, is this set in the 60s because that's like, the death penalty or hanging did not exist later on?
I think it had to be because of the hanging.
And the answer to that is no. I looked all this up. The death penalty was not abolished in Washington State until 2018. And Washington State was the last state in the entire United States to get rid of its gallows. Of the 110 executions carried out in the entire history of Washington State, 107 of them were by hanging.
What the hell, Washington State?
That means they watched this movie and then continued doing more of them.
Yeah. Hangings or executions, at least, continued to be legal in Washington State for 18 years after this film was released.
Josh, kudos to you on all that research. What a reporting job.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, I can't even figure out what year this movie takes place in.
I mean, I do think, though, that that's a valid criticism, that if this is meant to be a period piece, whatever the reason is, it is very unsuccessful at giving you that sense.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of our 99 season, I think, when we did The Station Agent, right? And maybe it's the train tracks and the train that kind of remind me of that. But it just feels like a small town that could be lost in space or time in the present day.
Right. Well, and the other thing, and we this is a whole Lars von Trier thing, is that he has this extreme fear of flying. So he doesn't shoot any of his films outside of like Denmark and Sweden, where he can easily travel. And all of his films that are set in the US are not shot in the US. Von Trier himself has never even been to the US. And the other thing is that to me, watching this, and maybe it's just because extra textually I know that, but not only did it not feel like the 60s, it did not feel like it was the United States.
Why didn't he just take a cruise?
I don't know.
He's got the money,
That is a fair point, but I know that is like one of his big things, and especially when he made like Dogville and Manderley, which are very like, it was part of what it was supposed to be the USA trilogy, was very, very heavy-handed commentary on America. And it's like, you've never even been here.
This guy loves trilogies, huh?
He does.
He's always doing trilogies.
I feel like sometimes he's retroactively labeling things trilogies, but Dogville and Manderley, like that, Manderley is a specific like direct sequel to Dogville, and it was meant to be a trilogy that got abandoned.
This is part of the Golden Heart trilogy, Josh. Golden Heart, Breaking the Waves, the idiots in this one. Talk about your Golden Hearts, huh?
Yeah, I haven't seen the idiots, but like I said, Breaking the Waves, the main character that Emily Watson plays there is very, very similar to Bjork's character, Selma, here in Dancer in the Dark. And I guess, yeah, I mean, if you're not willing to endure this film, we can, give you a quick recap. Selma is a factory worker in Washington State in 1964, allegedly.
Obviously.
And she has some sort of unnamed condition. And I imagine this might be something you talked about with Justin, of she's going blind. And I think Von Trier has zero interest in actual medical things of any kind. This is purely a plot device. He wants his character to go blind. And furthermore, he wants this to be this like genetic condition that she's passed on to her son. And he too will eventually go blind. And not though if he gets an operation that is only available in the US, apparently can only be done at a young age and costs exactly the amount of money that she's able to save up. But her neighbor / landlord, the police officer played by David Morse, steals her money because he has basically gone broke and is hiding it from his wife. And when she tries to get her money back, she shoots him, beats him to death with a safety deposit box in a really, really, really long and uncomfortable scene.
Well, he demands that she do it. He says, you're never going to get the money back unless you kill me, and you have to do this. So, he forces her hand on that. And I didn't mind that. I minded what all the stuff that took place afterwards about her, like, well, even though this guy screwed me over, I promised I'd keep a secret for him. So I'm just going to do that, even if it means that I die and my kid has no mom and everybody's life is ruined, because I promised him I'd keep a secret. And I'm a good friend, even though this guy stole my money and made me murder him in the most horrific way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is extremely frustrating to watch her do that. And the other thing where she is like adamantly against ever like telling her son that he has this condition, and both of the stubbornness on both of those points and her like extreme martyrdom gets very frustrating to the audience and to the other characters. Catherine Deneuve, who plays her best friend, is basically like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Yeah. And she will not listen even when she's about to be hanged.
And I also didn't buy when they found out the truth that she was like, no, I refuse to go along with the truth, that like legally there would have to be something where they'd be like, well, hey, this is the truth. We have to do something about this.
No, I think on that front, unless she files the appeal, which she clearly says she's not willing to do, like she's been convicted legally, whether she actually did it or not, you have to file a motion to reopen your trial, reopen your case. And that's, I don't know. On the other hand, I will say that much like the blindness, I don't think Lars von Trier really cares about realistic depictions of the American legal process.
So you mentioned that Catherine Deneuve and Peter Stormare, who I think Peter Stormare is excellent in this movie. It was nice to see him play such because we know him as like this heavy and this crook and this criminal and this boss like a lot of the time, right? So to see him play like such an understated character, I really thought was nice. But the whole thing is like her whole reasoning for not rescinding or telling the truth is like, well, the lawyer said he'd, take the money that they have saved up. So, and then the kid can't get the surgery. So she says, no, I got to have the kid get the surgery. Right. But these friends have gone to such extents already for her. Don't you think if she just said like, hey, that means I'm going to lose all this money. Don't you think they would have been like, cool, well, we'll start once you're out, you'll work again and we'll start helping you put away money and we'll make sure your kid gets the surgery.
They're going to start a GoFundMe because it's not 1964.
I'm just saying like the logic of this all falls apart in so many ways.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I would say again that like Lars von Trier does not have any interest in logic.
No, I understand that, but as a loyal listener to Awesome Movie Year, Josh, you know that I do.
Yes, Jason is often the
Mhm.
logic police on
Yeah.
these films in a nitpicking way. I think it's more than nitpicking here, really. You have to kind of go along with every leap that he makes here, no matter how unbelievable. And part of that, too, of course, is that this is a musical. Obviously, that's never realistic. And as you say, it takes 40 minutes. It's weird because it takes 40 minutes to get to the first musical number. And when that happened, I thought, oh, maybe this movie only has like 3 songs in it. Maybe I misremembered how much of a musical it is. But once they start, the songs are pretty frequent. It just takes a long time to get there. Did you like the songs? Did you like the musical aspect?
I like the music because I like musicals and I like, Bjork's cool. But from a structural standpoint, if you got this script and it didn't have the name Lars von Trier on front, would you be like, what college student wrote this without understanding how to make structure and logic work in a film?
I mean, again, I think that Lars von Trier would take that as a badge of honor that you would think that. But yeah, I mean, I do think that if you want the movie to be a musical and if you want to get across the idea that Selma kind of escapes into these fantasies of being in musical numbers, it would help maybe to have that at the beginning. And furthermore, one of the big things in this is her love of like classic Hollywood musicals, right? And she talks a lot about the structure of those musicals. And a big thing, of course, the idea of the finale and how sad it is that, once you have the final number, then the movie is over, and he plays with that at the end. But I think one of the things that musicals often have is a big opening number. And maybe that would have helped convey what he's trying to get there.
I can even like defend like the idea of like, hey, we needed to get to know her and like get to her depths of emotion before we put a song in, but it still happens 10 minutes in, not 40 minutes in.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, I did like the musical numbers, or I found them interesting. I am kind of with Dave in that I'm like, I'm not listening to Bjork's music for fun or whatever. I don't find her as annoying per se, but it's not really something that I'm going to listen to. But I did like the musical numbers here. I think she does a really good job of projecting Selma's inner self into those musical numbers. Some of the other actors can't really sing, which is, again, I think probably part of the point, but you don't really want to hear Peter Stormare attempt to sing. That's not a good idea, really.
I don't know. I'm not against it. I know like in the soundtrack they replaced David Morse's singing with like Tom York. So
yeah, I think it's Peter Stormare, but all of those actors are replaced on Bjork's soundtrack.
Well, again, like I think that's sloppy right there, right? Like if you're going to make a musical, make a musical.
Well, I'm pretty sure that decision was Bjork's decision, that it's really like her album that she created, and she wrote these songs.
It's called Selma songs.
Right, right. So, you can't put that decision, I think, on Lars von Trier.
Do you know how many tracks are on that album?
A lot more than are in the film, I'm sure.
78!
Oh, okay. It was that joke. But I think it does have more than is in the film, because it's really like a Bjork album that's kind of like using the film as a jumping off point.
I thought the first song was the best, where she's in the factory and you're getting all that kind of ambient sound and all that metal and, clanking. And I thought that was the best use of environment and musicality in the film.
Yeah, that was really good. I think the courtroom song with Joel Grey has a bit of that as well that I enjoyed. And I've Seen It All, which is the song that's nominated for an Oscar. I feel like as a song, that is the strongest, and especially as a song that does what musicals do, that expresses something specific, emotionally, that the character is dealing with. I thought that was good. The idea of her like letting go and, hey, I'm going to go blind and that's okay. I've seen everything that I need to see in life. I thought that was an affecting sentiment there.
Yeah, I was happier with Joel Grey because I like watching Joel Grey dance.
And he's fun. I mean, at least that's someone who is known for being in musicals, who they brought in as a ringer, as Aldrich Novy, the famous Czech film star who Selma lies is her father, who also weirdly like is a real person, Aldrich Novy.
It's just so, I mean, again, like, I don't want to get repetitive, but it's like, I'm making up that this person's my dad. oh, that person lives in California now. He's so easy to track down. We got him here. It's like, it's very rudimentary the way that that's scripted.
Yeah, it is, but I think it's sort of meant to be that way. And I think Selma it's it's not explicit in part because it's set in this older era, but Selma clearly, in addition to going blind, is not all mentally there, right?
I think most of the characters you could say that about. I mean, even the Peter Stormare character would be considered something of a stalker today, I'd say, right?
True, true.
So all of these characters are rough around the edges. The one performance that really I didn't think worked at all, Josh, was Linda, the Cara Seymour, who played the Bill's wife, the cop's wife. I did not think she was good in this movie. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you are. I think a lot of the performances are a bit awkward, again, possibly on purpose, because I don't think Cara Seymour is necessarily a bad actor.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at her filmography, she's worked with a ton of major directors. I just don't think she's good in this.
Right. No, and I agree. And I think von Trier is, as much as Björk is good, maybe because she could fully immerse herself in this to a degree that was perhaps not healthy for her. If an actor isn't doing that, then von Trier maybe isn't the best environment, the best collaborator for them or whatever. So, yeah, I agree. And I think part of the problem there is that you have to buy the idea that, she's sort of this manipulator or whatever, that she is demanding all of this money from Bill to the degree that he is bankrupting himself and is unwilling to tell her, like, hey, you can't keep spending money on frivolous things. And you don't really get that sense of her as a character.
But this is the other thing I don't understand, right? Like, after Bill is murdered and Bill comes up with the story, hey, I was at Selma's, she was trying to seduce me and take all my money, right? And then we get the murder and she takes the money. But Linda thinks that Bill is rich because of an inheritance. So
right.
Did she never look at a bank account after this and be like, oh, we're totally broke? What is happening here?
Well, I think part of the point is that for some reason, these people don't keep their money in the bank, right? Selma keeps her cash in this little tin, which is why Bill is able to steal it. And Bill keeps all his money in a safety deposit box in cash, right? That's what he's looking at and showing Selma is empty. So presumably there is no bank account to look at. And I would imagine that one of the reasons that Bill is fixated on the idea that if he's dead, it will solve the problem is because he has some kind of life
insurance. Yeah, he's a cop and he gets insurance. I get that part of it. I just think there are so many holes that you could poke through all these things. Even if that was the case and it was the $2,000, wouldn't they be like, hey, where was the rest of the money from this safety deposit box? And then she would say, I keep secrets. And then they'd be like, okay, song time. And then I'm dead. It doesn't make sense, Josh.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you can't poke holes in this. I'm just saying that this is not the kind of movie where that even matters to me.
And this goes back to what we were saying with the reviews. You either go all the way along with it or it's totally submarine from the beginning.
Right. And although I don't know, I will say that I went partially along with it. I'm not with these people who are like, this is brilliant. This is one of the greatest films. I don't think that. I appreciate and admire a lot of what he's attempting here, but I didn't enjoy this. And some of these things that you're pointing out did bug me. And I feel like there isn't enough to immerse me in the movie to fully let those things go. I do think, though, however, that he intends for you to let those things go.
Yeah, well, I let go what year it's supposed to take place in, so it shows what I know. Dave, you like music. What did you think?
Yeah, I liked the musical scenes. They were the pretty much the only thing I really liked about the movie, especially like you said, that first one, also the courtroom one where it's like the sound of the pencil on the paper. I thought that was good. And as a fan of industrial music, I like that, using that, ambient sound in the tracks. But the problem with those scenes is I felt like they kind of exacerbated everything else that I didn't like about it, because it made me see her as just all the more, not all there. And especially compounded with the lying and, not telling the truth about the whole situation that, she's going to get the death penalty because of. It just made me really angry at this lady.
Well, and I think that's part of the point, that she definitely is not all there. Like,
Yeah.
she definitely is suffering from some kind of undiagnosed mental illness.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely the case with Emily Watson in Breaking the Waves as well. And I mean, I think part of it is that, like, he wants you to feel sorry for these people, but he also wants you to feel that anger and then to feel guilty about being angry at someone so pure who is having their life destroyed.
Yeah, it's pure frustration from my end, not
Yeah.
sadness.
She's really helping destroy her own life. So
Right.
how do you get
Right, but
past
she's
that?
doing it out of this sense of martyrdom, or this sense of that she is so fixated on other people's concerns and happiness, or what she perceives as their happiness, that she's willing to sacrifice her own life.
Well, then I will take issue with that fact as well, because the son, Gus, who she's doing this for, right, is like there very much in the first act, and then he's never in the movie again.
Oh yeah, I mean, and he's not even really a character. And you to the point that you got his name wrong. His name is Gene, not Gus.
Gene Van Zandt.
Yeah, but no, you're right. He's barely even. He has like 4 lines in the entire movie,
And
right?
he sings a little, but he's prevalent in that first act.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
he
Well,
never-
because he's there when she's at home, and then once she goes into prison and she refuses to see him, then we don't see him anymore.
I mean, I think he disappears before that too, though.
Yeah.
Like you see it, you don't see him for a long period of time even before that.
Right.
So.
But again, I think he's sort of meant to be a bit of an abstraction, that she's sacrificing herself for a person that we don't even really register as a person, but she is just that self-sacrificing.
Can we just look? We've kind of piled on a lot here, but can we pile on a little more, Josh? What a waste of Robbie Mueller.
I mean, fair, but on the other hand, I would be interested to know that maybe what his perspective was. I mean, was he like, "Ugh, I can't believe I have to shoot this movie this way," or maybe he was excited to shoot a movie in a way that he'd never shot a movie before. Digital video was a new thing still at this time. I think there were a lot of cinematographers that were excited about the possibilities, even though it always, like I said, ended up looking like garbage.
Yeah, I just think even with digital, like back then, I think a lot of this is like Gus Van Sant wanted it to be rough, and Robbie Mueller could have made it a lot prettier if he was given the opportunity to. But
What
even if
did Gus Van Sant have to do with this?
Dude, I don't know why I said Gus Van Sant, because I said Gus
is
earlier.
the son, and
Yeah.
Gus Van Sant is now the director.
Lars von Trier, Gus Van Sant. I'm all over the place. I meant Lars von Trier.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I you were flustered earlier. You didn't know my name. I don't know Gus Van Sant's name
I don't
anymore.
know what
It's Lars von Trier.
What has he done to us?
I know. Let's just rate this thing, man.
Yeah. Should we rate this out of 7? 7. See, I don't even
Yeah,
know. What is
see?
our rating system? Who knows? We're gonna rate
5 Björks.
5 Bjorks. Sure. I'm going to give it 3 because I mean, that seems like a wishy-washy rating to give a movie. This seems like a movie you should either give a 1 or a 5, but I appreciate a lot of what he's doing here. It's not a movie that I've now seen it twice, and that's one more time than I really ever wanted to see it, but it's a worthwhile endeavor.
I, on Letterboxd at Go for Jason, gave it 3, but after this discussion and my discussion with Justin, which is coming up, I'm dropping it to 2.5 because just too many holes in this thing.
Yeah, Jason likes the logic. So, Dave, how would you rate this?
It sure does.
Yeah, I also went 2.5 on it. I couldn't quite go to 3. Just not enough to enjoy here.
There weren't even any gorillas in this one.
That's
Josh.
true.
How's he going to give it 3?
I feel like Lars von Trier could make a movie about a gorilla and it would really be horrifying, right? The gorilla is not going to come out well in a Lars von Trier movie.
Mm-mm.
So, Jason, what are we going to listen to next here?
So I have a nice interview, a wonderful interview. I've played it up for you. All you have to do is eat it with your ears. It's me and the #1 adaptive skateboarder in the world, my buddy Justin Bishop, who I wrote about for Desert Companion. He has a degenerative eye condition and was sighted, and he gradually went blind. So he has a lot of different insight for us on this film. And it's also interesting to hear how he experienced the film.
So come back for that interview from Jason.
All right. We are here with a very special guest, a man who demands that I call him an old friend. It's my buddy from the open mic days. It's a professional skateboarding legend in the making, Justin Bishop. What up?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So about a year or two ago, I did an article on Justin for Desert Companion. He's a professional skateboarder. What do I call you? Sightless? Blind? What's the word now?
Yeah, blind. Yeah. Adaptive, but yeah, blind.
Adaptive. Right. Yeah. So I did this article on him, and, we were talking about awesome movie year, and Justin said if there was ever an opportunity, he'd like to come on. And I think I found a movie for us that you'll have some unique insight into.
Yeah.
So before we talk about that, so just so everyone knows, you were a skateboarder, but you weren't like Tony Hawk. So you decided to go blind so you could have better results against less competition. Is that how this went? Or
Yeah. That's pretty much it. Took some bleach and just called it a day. And I was born with a genetic degenerative eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa. So I've been going blind since I was born, but it didn't start affecting me till I was like 20. And then I started becoming visually impaired and legally blind. About 25 is where it went like shadows and nothingness. So, and that's been about like 13 years since I've been fully blind. So, just my new life.
Yeah, but you're kicking ass, man. I think you're probably a role model for younger skaters, younger athletes out there who are differently abled. And are you still ranked number 1 in adaptive skate in the world?
In bowl, yeah, in bowl and transition. So I am, but street, I am not. Number 2 in street.
Well, we're gives you something to work towards again, right?
Yeah.
So you've kind of mentioned your degenerative eye condition, and you share a similarity with the lead character, Björk, Selma, in Dancer in the Dark here. So I thought you would have some insight into this. First of all, did they play that characteristic honestly in the movie?
Yeah. So coming into it, I was like, all right, I don't want to be like Neil deGrasse Tyson and completely destroy Gravity, because that was still a cool movie. I didn't want to destroy it with like realism. And then like I checked out this movie, listened to it with audio description, in case people were wondering how blind people watch movies, but checked it out. And the movie was horrible, but man, they had somebody in there that knew somebody that was going blind, or they had someone on set that was like doing all the right motions. Because when the narrator was describing, I was like, oh, hey, a little nod, and something subtle, not as hit you over the head as I killed your husband in a song type of subtle, but everything else was in the blind aspect of it was nice and subtle and really realistic.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to talk a little more about your movie viewing experience, because as you said, you were born sighted. Did you have to adapt to watching movies this way? Are you still getting for you, do you feel like you're getting a full experience watching movies? As you said, you check them out, you have the audio on, it's specific. I think we would both agree they do a pretty good job of trying to make everything fully, kind of sensory in as many ways as possible for viewers, right?
Yeah, I would say that for me, I'm glad it exists, so that way I can stay on top of like cultural references and the rest of society. But no, I don't ever just go put on a movie for myself, because even with audio description, I'm getting like maybe 70% of the content. There's so many subtleties in video. So like it gives me a broad stroke of like what's going on. But if I really want to entertain myself, I'll pick up like an audiobook or something.
Gotcha. So tell me what you thought were the positives of the movie first, because you said that you felt they portrayed her character honestly.
Yeah. So the stuff that they did, because they didn't, in the audio description, they don't exactly say when it takes place. So I'm guessing it was like 1940s to 1950s area. Is that accurate? Or
no? This is great, because now we're learning things. The movie came out in 2000, and yes. I took it for present of that time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dave, would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So they didn't give me usually they'll do like a period piece background or like state when this is taking place. They didn't do this in this movie, so I was like, I don't know. I was like, it could be like just all the dialogue just sounded 1950s esque. So, and I was like working at a factory. What she was like doing was it Sound of Music. So I was just like, maybe it's just a time of that.
Yeah, I think, you know what? Like, I could totally see that. Maybe you're right because, you know, spoilers here. In the end, you know, when she is killed by the state, she is hanged, which I don't think they do that anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if they were doing that 20 years ago, but yeah, the factory, the bicycle that they give the kid, you know, kind of walking on the train tracks. Maybe it's just a small town that kind of, you know, is stuck in a time or place, but. I see what you're saying there. What did you think of the music? I thought the music was pretty good.
Did you really? Oh man, I could not get past the. First off, I liked the surprise of it turning into a musical 40 minutes in. I was like, oh, okay, this is a musical. But the lyrics were just like so trapped in a closet. Like I really thought like R. Kelly did the lyrics for this. It was just too much on the head. You know, I mean, the actual music wasn't bad. It was like kind of techno-esque, right?
Yeah, just I would say Bjorkish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but you're saying you felt like there was no kind of emotional lift to it. It was just like an explanation of exactly what was happening at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I did like, it's always good to have a zombie, you know, duet, but I just like, every time like a song kicked off, unless it was like, you know, a cover of what was actually happening in the real musical or on set musical, I was not into the music at all. And I like musicals.
So with the music, you know, a lot of it is like them using what is in the ambiance and the atmosphere. So for instance, when she's singing in the factory, you know, they're doing that kind of stomped or Blue Man Group type thing where they're playing just on equipment in the factory as opposed to instruments. Was that clear in the way that you watched it?
Yeah, that one, that actual, the very first, like, you know, scene for the musical where it takes place in the factory, I was digging it because I also like dig when I still to this day, because I'm in a different world than her because I'm not visually impaired, but I was visually impaired at one time. So like hearing how like she's faking it, like faking being able to see, or you know, trying to like understate it, and then using a pattern or using you know, different ways that humans like use to detect stuff instead of her eyes, was like, I was like, oh man, and they didn't hit that over the head at all. So I thought that was like nice and subtle, and then it goes into the song of the actual banging on the pattern of the machines and stuff. That was the only good song though.
And just for clarity, did you rent this movie from off of like a library DVD, or is there a special service that you use so with the audio descriptions, or how does this work?
Yeah, there's a special service I use. It's called Audio Vault. And so if you're blind or visually impaired, you can just start downloading audio file movies from there. So yeah, it's something with the kind of like Book of Congress, but with movies for the blind.
Gotcha. And is this your first Lars von Trier movie, or are you a von Trier head, Justin?
No. So that's actually like a question I had is the person that wrote or directed this, are they going blind?
No, but he does have a kind of, let's say, a characteristic of his films are exhausting you with making you see very depressive elements of humanity, which, and I'm not talking about the condition, but everything else that this woman dealt with, right?
Yeah. Was this his first movie?
No, von Trier, you know, kind of one of the spearheads of Dogma 95, been making movies since probably the 80s, and this one Cannes, and then I think Melancholia about 11 years later is his most well-known, and that movie's really good. I recommend that. But tell me where this movie lost you, because I know you didn't like this film.
When a human life is worth $2,474.10, that's when it lost me. you can get out of prison and remake that money. You know, a child needs a mom over eyesight, a delayed eyesight. It wasn't even that he was never going to get eyesight. It was that it was going to be delayed, you know? So there is just like some aspects of it was like, you know, vision. I think sighted people have this idea of vision where they can't live without it. And I get it. And it is important. But like after living 13 years without it, it's not the biggest deal. I mean, if zombies happen, it's a big deal. But in a normal society, even the one she was in, I don't think it's as big of a deal. So that's the only part where I was like, oh, like just get your eyesight, then work more, then pay for it again for your son's eyesight. So that was just the roughest part for me, where she just couldn't think logically.
So, and I want to follow up on that, but so one thing I didn't understand that you're saying is she could have had that surgery for herself to regain her vision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't know that. I thought she was like kind of it was done with for her, but I know that's probably the main criticism of the film is people call it really manipulative, and you know I'm a big person on logic in movies, and it bothered me too. Like, I mean, I like the movie, but I think your criticism is fair. It bothered me too because it's like, hey, bro. Also, this would never hold up in a court of law. They'd be like, hey, guess what? Here's what really happened with the murder, even though she doesn't want us to tell you that.
Yeah. It's like, I had a hard time with like when she's yelling at her friend, she's like, I made a promise. Like, you made a promise to a thief. Like, and now you're holding tight to that. Like it just kind of blew me away. But I did appreciate, I don't know if this is spoilers or whatever, but I did appreciate the telephone ring at the end and no one picking it up. Like, I liked that.
So they might have given her a stay and then no one picked it up and then they kill her is what you're saying.
Yeah. It was pretty evident. You know, it was just quiet. There's a phone ring. There's some kind of text on the screen. And then it was like the drop. And I was like, oh, good. Because like if she made it out of this, I was going to be even more pissed. I was like, no, you made your bed, lay in it. And that was the only like satisfying thing when she died. I was like, finally, like that's what happens. Like when you don't like do court right.
Yeah, I think that whole third act is kind of fails the movie because I agree with you. Like this dude is completely horrible to her. And she's like, well, I made him a promise, so I have to keep it. You know, and it's like, well, he just kind of set you up, stole your money, and is trying to ruin your life and won't kill himself. So now he's going to traumatize you by making you kill him. Yeah. And not just that, like he's also saying if you don't do it, he's going to like basically slander and libel you and ruin your life. Right.
Yeah.
So that was strange. And then everything afterwards where they get to like, you know, she refuses to say anything in court. She goes to jail. She's going to get the death penalty. And then they find out the truth. And she's like, nah, we can't worry about the truth now. You know, that stuff. I did think that was a very weak element of the film.
I did as well. It's just, but I'm telling you, it was like a reverse Grass Tyson because like they nailed it. Like her following the train tracks home and kicking it every couple like feet to make sure it's still there. I remember doing that when I was in college, and you know, just like little things like that. It's called like we call it edging because you're just feeling the edge and going along with it without a cane. So I thought that was really neat. I liked that she never accepted help from anybody. I didn't like that she did that, but that's also a very a thing that happens with people that are visually impaired, where if they ask for help, then it admits to themselves that they are disabled and need help. So they are like the people that have low vision are the most stubborn about it. So like, I love that aspect of it. I don't know many eye conditions where if you know about them, you go blind faster, but you know, that kind of also upset me a little bit where it's like, dude, tell your son and maybe he can learn Braille or learn something like instead of just ignoring this, what's happening in his life. So there's just, honestly, she was a bad mother. So that's what I took away from the movie. It was like, yay, even people with disabilities can be bad parents. So
right,
nice.
Right. Yeah, that's right. You're equally as shitty no matter how you are.
Yeah.
The thing you just said about people with low vision kind of being the most stubborn to ask for help. I remember when I wrote the article on you, one of the most fascinating aspects was when you set up for a skateboarding tournament, like your wife is there or a friend is there, and you're kind of going through the paces with them before you start. You want to walk me through that process real fast?
Yeah. So when I'm in a skateboard competition, it's timed. So between 60 seconds or, 1 minute, 30 seconds. And within that, if my board shoots away, I have to depend on others to get it back to me as soon as possible so I can get back on and start my run, along with setting up beepers for me. I use sound devices to skate and know my locations. So if I have more than two out there, it's just too much noise and I can't understand where it's coming from. So I'll have my wife or a skate buddy that, helps me out before. Once I get that trick, they drop the next beeper and turn off the other one. So, it's a whole teamwork process. And, being visually impaired, it's, when I was visually impaired, it was like, I wanted to show everyone that I can do it on my own. I didn't want people to think less of me. But, after I lost my vision, I kind of had a realization that everybody asks for help. Everyone asks for help in relationships, they ask for help in other things. So I just try to make my normal life as solid as possible so I don't feel bad for asking for help for about vision stuff.
Yeah, I got to say, because so Justin and I know each other from back in the open mic scene in Las Vegas. And he just used the word skate buddy and before that edging. And I was going to make a completely inappropriate joke that would work at a bar on a Sunday night, but maybe doesn't fit the podcast as well.
Oh, the minute I said it, I was like, man, I'm talking about edging to people that aren't blind. And I'm like, they're going to. So I was like, all right, let's just get it over with. Usually I would make the joke first, but like I actually trust your sense of humor. So it'd be creative and new. Because I hear the same old jokes all the fucking time. So if it's new and creative, I love it.
Yeah, because now you can do it both ways. It's a double-edged sword. Hey-yo.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of hacky jokes about edging, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite movie? Just in general, one of your favorites?
I would say like growing up, because I was kind of more like, like a kid, like a teenager, like wanting to find meaning and stuff. So I always like the Virgin Suicides or Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. But as I get older, I'm just like, fucking Avengers is pretty cool.
Because what I'm learning from you on this is, like you said, you use the words a reverse Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
Which, if ever we needed someone to Benjamin Button himself.
Yeah.
But like, because it sounds like they did such a good job with the setup, but they must have had like an idea in place of how they were going to end it. And then because they wanted to get to that end point, they just defied logic to get there, right? They're throwing away all this research and all this kind of truth that of the subject. Is there a film that you would recommend that treats a condition like whether it's blindness or a degenerative eye condition, like kind of what would you recommend as a movie for someone to watch? That like if they wanted to see like a true representation of that?
Movies are a little bit harder. There's not many you can just do Daredevil, but like I don't think any of them do it. There's this show on the CW. It's called In the Dark, and it follows this woman, and she's just a person. And she gets drunk. She sleeps around. She's normal, and then just little things with her friends or family that affect her blindness come into play. But I would say that is one of the better aspects of showing off somebody with blind or visual impairedness.
Would you, after this, want to watch more Lars von Trier movies?
No. Like I had a problem with like I know like movies should have like 3 acts and structure, but I didn't think they're all supposed to be 3 different themes. It started like as a drama. 40 minutes in was the first song. And then the last act was a court drama that was like worse than any like Law and Order thing I've ever seen. So it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I like that you're firing at this thing. I thought the performances were good, and I think you see that with a lot of his movies. Like, did you think like Björk won Best Actress at Cannes? I thought she killed it in this thing.
I like I believed the timidness of her. All the acting, I felt it sounded real. I never once thought that, oh, this is an actor in a movie. I just thought this is a shitty movie. And so, yeah, I kind of feel that. I liked everyone's performances. I liked, even the singing was good. It was just the lyrics.
Yeah, which she wrote. You're anti-Bjork.
Oh my God. If that is, I feel so ashamed, but like, damn girl. Like, what'd you watch? Trapped in the Closet. That's all I thought about the whole movie after, like, I had to do what I had to do. I had to do what I had to do. I killed your husband. Like,
I think you're ready to make the remake of this, buddy.
I don't even know how you would. Like, I want to know what the exact condition they have are. They just said she's myopic, which just means nearsighted. So, like, I don't know what vision loss that, like, she would have. I don't know when it was taking place, because with what you were talking about, the hang and like being hung and all that. And I'm like, what blind procedures existed then? You know, so I just didn't understand like where they were going with the curing of it.
By the way, I just looked it up, and it was actually 1964, according to Wikipedia.
Nice.
Okay.
No, I think that's so interesting because, like, I'm watching it and I'm just looking at it and like, oh, I never even considered that this was a period piece. But you got different clues from the way that you viewed the film or experienced it, and like that's really interesting. And it shows that I'm an idiot and you're not.
No, well, I think it's more of you get to just be taken on the ride, and I have to guess what they're trying to tell me. So I'm trying to paint a picture in my head, and they didn't give me all the information. So I'm trying to like build it up. I'm like, all right, factory worker. All right, weird double shifts and like all kinds of stuff. So like, and what were they packaging? What they make at the factory? Was it playing cards or was it postcards?
Dave?
I thought it was postcards, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Can I ask a question, Jason, that I'm curious about?
No, Dave.
Well, I don't usually chime in on the interviews that much.
Of course you do.
Yeah, sure. I was just wondering, do you find that there are more movies that are getting the assistive experience like being added to them for you?
Yeah. So when I first became blind, there was nothing. There was maybe a handful of movies, but they were like the biggest blockbusters. And now with between America's ADA bill about having more entertainment with audio description, and then the internet being able to team up with, different cultures like England or Australia, that we can just take theirs as well and add it to our file. So we don't have to have, you just got to get used to the word torch for flashlight and bonnet for trunk, and then you're good to go. So, but yeah, it's definitely spread over everywhere.
That's great to hear.
So was it frustrating for you like back in the day as compared to now? Because it sounds like, I mean, dude, you've did a great job of like painting a better picture of this film than I did. So do you think right now is an easier time in general, not just in the quantity, but of the quality of the descriptions?
I will say that with everything going on in today's like technology and even inclusiveness, they don't even need a person to do this anymore. So the one I listened to was TTS, which is an AI system that watched it, translated it, put a narrative thing to it, and then like maybe a couple of people watched it again to make sure it was accurate enough, and then they can spit it out, kind of like how closed captioning is made. So like that's one of the best things for these low budget movies or like less known movies, but like Avengers or any kind of big Mission Impossible type movie will have their own type of narrator, and they'll go with the theme of the movie and it will kind of blend in.
When you get a movie like that, how the action sequences, is that experience more exciting, more difficult? Because I mean, there's just so much going on in sequences like that. How do you experience that?
Yeah, action scenes, it's more of like, I just wait till it's over and then hear who won, So it's just, to me, the fighting or, whatever's happening on screen is just no data until the end result. So I kind of around that time zone out until the fight's over.
Do you have a favorite type of movie? It's a comedy, I'm guessing, right?
Comedy's the best because I don't need audio description for it. But if I need audio description, comedy's the worst type of movie to watch because they kill jokes. They'll like describe what's happening before the punchline. So that's 50-50. But I don't know. I would say nowadays I'm just really into like TV shows. Like I love going on that journey. I love the character development. I just feel like movies, they're at a disadvantage because they have to cram it all in. But I love that natural feeling of like watching a show for like 2 months and then you feel like you grow with the characters.
Oh, that's cool. I think maybe when you're done skateboarding, you could do audio descriptions of comedies because knowing you from the open mic scene, you killed a lot of jokes back in the
day. Yeah, I'll run it first. I'll just destroy every joke.
So, I want to tell our audience, you and I have discussed it and I still think we should do it. I mean, Justin's been featured in a lot of kind of cool, New Yorker, New York Times, you can name all that stuff. But I know we've been talking about possibly putting a documentary together. And I still think we should do that. I think it's really interesting. And, between you and some of your comrades in the adaptive skate world, I really think that's a good project there.
Yeah. Like, one thing that's going on with my skate career right now is like I'm on the tail end. Last year I tore my ACL. So I had to get knee surgery. My meniscus is gone, destroyed it, but it's good enough where I can put out one more last part. So might be fun to do like a, transition to what's after skateboarding type of thing because I can't sit down.
Yeah. So tell us where people can find you, follow you, check you out, bro.
You can find me, Justin the Bishop on all social medias, all one word, Justin the Bishop. And then, check out the New Yorker documentary piece. That was like awesome. The Barracks, if you want to check out any of my skate videos. Yeah, I'm around. I don't know, magazines, Thrasher. I'm in there a couple times.
Oh, look at this guy just naming like the premier skate magazine and just dropping it like it means nothing. Oh, I'm just in Thrasher.
Oh, well, I never know who I'm talking to. So it could like impress people or they could be like, cool, man. I don't know what that is. So I always have to I don't know if you know skateboarding. So I always have to undercard it.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I just did a few Bones Brigade videos, whatever.
Yeah.
Justin Bishop. I love you, brother.
I love you too.
Cool. We got to get together soon. Thanks for doing this. And I'm going to say it on air and we'll talk more about it off air. But I think you'd be a great guest on Dave's podcast too, piecing it together going forward. I think we got to set you up on
that. Whatever. I got nothing but free time in between skating. So anything.
Let's do it.
Thanks a lot, Justin.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks again to my old pal, Justin Bishop. Just hitting ollies and grinds, Josh. Just doing all these cool skateboarding moves on our podcast
What if Lars von Trier made a skateboarding movie?
I mean, look, this movie looks a lot worse than some homemade skateboarding videos, so why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, let's dive into the legacy of this thing. As we said, Josh, like, neither of us are putting this at the top of our Von Trier list.
No, I mean, and that list would be very all over the place, I think, for me. And a lot of those movies I haven't seen in a long time. But as I said, Nymphomaniac, which was the most recent film of his that I've seen, I really liked and had on my top 10 list. I remember liking Melancholia quite a bit. I know you watched that recently. I was going to watch Antichrist, which was probably the most notable Von Trier movie that I haven't seen yet. And that was the one I just gave up on attempting yesterday.
Yeah, I was looking up what he's got going, and all I saw was a thing called Etudes, which is a series of 10 black and white shorts. That's like his only project in development, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think that might be a project that he started and maybe is not following through with. I mean, his most recent work was the long belated third season of his TV series, The Kingdom, which premiered in 2022. And I think I haven't seen any of the seasons of that, but some people compared it kind of like to Twin Peaks: The Return, when David Lynch returned to that after so many years. And that was what Von Trier did after decades away. And I know he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, I think a couple years ago. So he's slowed down a bit, but he's said that he intends to continue working. So I'm sure it'll be something, whatever he comes up with next.
I mean, he's fascinating to read about, and he's an interesting character. He's got a lot of like fans, or let's say actors who like love him, and then he's got a ton of actors who, including Björk, who claim mistreatment from him.
Right. I mean, we tend not to get into that too heavily, but she has come out and said that he was abusive to her during the production of this film. And this is, again, her essentially only acting work, certainly her only major role. And she said, even before talking about that abuse, she had said that she didn't intend to continue acting. She shows up in the video installation Drawing Restraint 9 from Matthew Barney, who's more of a performance or conceptual artist than a filmmaker. And she does have a brief role in The Northman, the Robert Eggers film, which is the closest to sort of like a mainstream acting job that she's done since then.
And Josh, she's a member of the Order of the Falcon, which is the coolest name ever for a award given by a country to people who succeed at things. It would be like being knighted, I think, in England or something.
And that's in Iceland, right?
I think so. Yes, that's what I said, right?
You didn't, but I mean, I just assumed. No, it's Iceland, where she's from. I figured that made sense. That was the case. So yeah, I mean, and if she hasn't had an acting career, but she's an extremely successful and acclaimed musician. Maybe we're not huge fans, but she has a very large following. Continues to release albums regularly. And that's really what people know her for. And I imagine that probably, there are probably plenty of Björk fans who listen to that Selma Songs album and don't even bother watching this film.
Yeah. And I mean, that video that was all over MTV, the one that I referenced earlier, boom, bang. That's a great video, right?
Yeah. It's Oh So Quiet. That is a great video. Should we talk about the swan dress?
The swan dress, you got that's really the legacy of this film, isn't it?
It is. The dress that she wore to the Oscars when the song was nominated. She wasn't, but she did attend and voted the 9th most iconic red carpet dress of all time in the Daily Telegraph, and like parodied. And I mean, other than the Jennifer Lopez like green dress that I can think of, and I don't remember if that was at the Oscars or at a different award show. I can't think of any other red carpet dresses that are that iconic.
The only other, I was going to say, how are there 8 ahead of it? The only other one I could think, wasn't there the costume designer who did the credit card dress?
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, I didn't look at what the list was, just that this was on it, but I'm pretty sure it's one of a very small number of dresses that have their own Wikipedia pages.
I haven't checked, but you've done quite a bit of research, and I can't even get names straight today. So.
Well, I was having some trouble with that as well. Catherine Deneuve, we've talked about multiple times before in our episodes on Belle de Jour and on Persepolis. And she's a legend. She's 80 years old. She's still working regularly. Her most recent credit in 2023. I enjoyed her recently in the Hirokazu Koreeda film, The Truth. And she, unlike a lot of the other co-stars of this film, had been in musicals, very famously in Jacques Demy musicals back in the 60s. And that was, I think, probably part of the reason why she was cast here. Although she only sings very briefly in this.
Yeah, movie. I don't even remember her singing in this movie.
She sings in that first musical number, I think, when it's in the factory and she's there. I'm pretty sure.
Her next project, Funny Birds, thrown together under tragic circumstances, 3 generations of women from the same family are forced to learn to live together on a small rural chicken farm in New Jersey. Sure. Which generates moving and amusing situations.
Yeah, why not? Jason grew up on a rural chicken farm in New Jersey.
No. But I appreciate this log line, which tells you like how the mechanism works of it. Like, not only are we going to give you the premise, but we're going to let you know it generates moving and amusing situations, because we can't think of a real log line for the movie.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of that assertion as well, but maybe it'll be a good movie. Who knows?
It's our first time talking about David Morse, one of the great character actors of the last 40 years, I'd say. Came to fame on St. Elsewhere. You know him from movies such as The Rock, The Long Kiss Goodnight, and of course, 12 Monkeys. He's got Emmy nods for House and John Adams.
Yeah, I mean, he's big on TV, House, Treme. Like, you're looking him up, it's crazy looking at his credits, and it's like, oh, he was the star of this 40-episode crime drama called Hack that, like, I don't even remember existing, but he did 4 seasons of it or whatever.
They should have done a crossover, a hack house.
Sure, why not?
House hack. So.
I'm not sure if we've talked about Peter Stormare before, but he's just as prolific as David Morse on TV. He does a lot of kind of B-movie roles now, but also known for working with the Coen brothers and always a distinctive presence whenever he shows up, certainly.
The lead singer of Autobahn.
Yeah, exactly.
Carl Hungus.
Yeah.
Joel Grey, an absolute legend. He's the man, bro. I mean, he's got the Academy Award, the BAFTA, the Golden Globe, the Tony. Just go watch Cabaret and you'll see just what an amazing performer this guy is.
And he comes in here very briefly and really just kind of steals the show in that courtroom number. And I think it demonstrates, as great as Peter Stormare and David Morse are as actors, like it demonstrates what value von Trier gets when he casts someone who has been in musicals.
I agree with you. And you're right. He totally steals. He steals, like he just comes in and eats, bro.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. You mentioned Robbie Mueller, who we talked about multiple times in our 1984 season as the cinematographer of both Repo Man and Paris, Texas. This was one of his final credits, actually. He only had a few more before he made his final film in 2003, and he died a few years ago in 2018. So, I like to believe that this was him being excited to experiment, but we don't.
Sure. Really. I mean, it still doesn't look good, but I mean,
Yeah, agreed.
Josh, I wanted to mention Vincent Patterson, who plays Samuel. Samuel.
He's the director of the kind of amateur production of The Sound of Music that Selma is in.
Yeah, but he also was the choreographer for Madonna's Blonde Ambition tour, for Beat It by Michael Jackson. He's worked with basically everybody, and he helped choreograph these musical numbers where they shot 100 cameras at once, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I would imagine that he's cast in that role in part because he's there to choreograph, and von Trier just kind of puts him in. And also, I wonder, I mean, one of the things that to me also led to the sense that like this isn't the United States is like I feel like fewer than half of the actors in this movie are like native English speakers.
Right.
And everyone has an accent, not just Selma, who's explicitly an immigrant, but like everyone else. And it's because, who can von Trier cast who is in Europe or is able to travel within his budget or whatever.
Right. So he had Stellan Skarsgård, who of course was in Good Will Hunting, directed by Gus Van Sant.
Nice job. Yeah. Stellan Skarsgård in a small role as one of the eye doctors, Udo Kier playing the other eye doctor. Imagine you go to the doctor and you got Stellan Skarsgård and Udo Kier.
You're getting bad news for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they're going to like remove your eyes without you asking them to. Something like that.
It's hard to, after Dune, to see Stellan Skarsgård in anything but a giant fat suit with like oxygen tanks rolling him along.
I mean, he's a great actor who has a lot of range. So
yeah,
he doesn't really have much to do here in this film.
No, he's. I'm just saying after Dune 2, that's what I recognize him as.
All right. Well, anything else you want to say about the legacy of this film, Jason?
No, I think we did it. Josh, did you know that Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen was written because John Landau, his manager, said the Born in the USA album, it still needs a hit. And frustratedly, Bruce Springsteen walked into the other room and just wrote Dancing in the Dark.
He also wrote Born in the USA.
Yeah, not Gus Van Sant.
No. Well, thank goodness we got references to both New Jersey and Bruce Springsteen in this episode on a Lars von Trier film.
Well, I mean, I did it because part of the influence of this film was the Dancing in the Dark musical number from the Bandwagon, the Fred Astaire, Sid Charisse movie. So,
but not Bruce Springsteen.
I mean, you can't start a fire without a spark.
All
you
right.
Can't. I don't know. Leave me alone.
That is Dancer in the Dark. And that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. Thanks again to Justin Bishop for joining us. You can blind us or, I don't know, sing at us online on social media.
Blinded by the Light, another Bruce Springsteen song.
Boy.
We're on all over social media. Awesome Movie Year, awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year, Awesome Movie Pod. I'm Jason Harris Comedy, Jay Harris Comedy, Jay Harris Pod. Go for Jason on Letterboxd.
No Jay Harris Pod. There's no Jay Harris Pod. You don't get a pod.
Okay, fine.
You can find some old stuff from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I'm at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook. at Signal Bleed on Twitter, X, and on Blue Sky, and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you have some more coherent thoughts about the movies that we talk about, any of the movies that we talk about on this show, tag your review, Awesome Movie Year. We'd love to know what you think. And you can listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at PiecingPod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, we're going to documentaries. I know you've wanted to cover Agnes Varda for a long time, one of the legendary filmmakers of France. So we're going to do The Gleaners and we're going to try to be a little more coherent, Josh.
So tune in next time for The Gleaners and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.
I think the fairies have sprayed me with the giggle dust today.